Good afternoon, students. Today we are going to discuss on the topic specified as non-performing assets, that is in the syllabus as a part of banking and insurance. Today let us start with the class on non-performing assets. What is the non-performing assets? Then why non-performing assets is most crucial for any banking functioning, etc. So to begin with, let us start with what is basically an asset classification for bank. So in banking system, assets are classified as performing assets, standard assets, non-performing assets, substandard assets, doubtful assets, loss assets. I will repeat once again. Assets are classified as performing assets, standard assets, non-performing assets, substandard assets, doubtful assets, and loss assets. Okay, this is basically asset classification. Let us now go one by one. What do you mean by performing assets? When it comes to banking terms, an account which does not disclose any problem and carry more than normal risk attached to the business. That means whenever a bank is extending any credit to anybody, if that credit is repayment is coming on a regular time, regular mode, and which is normally more than the normal risk, which is normally recovered as compared with the normal risk, then that type of assets are called as performing assets. All loan facilities which are regular in terms of payment, all loan facilities which are regular in terms of payment is called as performing assets, is called as performing assets. Then second classification, second category is non-performing assets. What do you mean by non-performing asset? What do you mean by non-performing asset? It is reverse to the previous one, that is performing assets. A non-performing asset means a loan or an account of a borrower which has been classified by a bank or financial institution as substandard, doubtful, or loss asset in accordance with the directions or guidelines relating to asset classification issued by Reserve Bank of India, as specified by Reserve Bank of. And when we go into detail relating to non-performing assets, previously, that is earlier assets were declared as non-performing assets after completion of the period for the payment of total amount of loan and a 30 days grace period. That means an asset can be classified as a non-performing asset if it is not going to be recovered after the due date of amount of loan is whichever is expired, then a grace period of 30 days. So once if the asset crosses this particular guidelines, it can be categorized as non-performing asset. In present scenario, there are certain changes have been taken place. Now the assets are declared as non-performing assets if none of the installment is paid in 180 days. If none of the installment is paid over a period of 180 days, that means 6 months in respect of a term loan. Whenever a term loan has been taken by a customer and not a single installment has been paid or cleared by the customer for a period of 180 days, then it can be treated as a non-performing asset. And if you go in detail further, with effect from March 31st, 2004, a non-performing asset shall be a loan or advance where number 1, interest and or installment of principal remain overdue for a period of more than 90 days in respect of a term loan. I will repeat once again. If interest or installment of a principal remain overdue of a for a period of more than 90 days in respect of term loans. And number 2, the account remains out of order for a period of more than 90 days in respect of overdraft or cash credit. That is, whenever a company takes overdraft facility and if they are not repaying within 90 days period, then it can be said as non-performing asset. Then the bill remains overdue for a period of more than 90 days in case of bills purchased and discounted. Whenever bills are purchased and discounted with the banks and the repayment is not done within a due date of 90 days period, then it can be called as non-performing assets. And in non-performing assets also there are different categories of NPAs are existing. Those are, number 1, standard assets. What do you mean by standard assets? Arrears of interest and the principal amount of loan does not exceed 90 days at the end of financial year. That is, whenever arrears or interest and the principal amount of loan does not exceed 90 days at the end of the financial year. So if within the 90 days if something is coming back to the bank, then it can be called as it is a standard asset. That is, there is no problem with the and substandard assets. There is a second category is there, that is called as substandard assets, which has remained NPA for a period of less than or equal to 12 months. That is, after the crossing the due date, if assets are remained as NPA for a period of less than or equal to 12 months. That means you can say it as once the period of standard assets is crossed, that is 90 days is crossed, and from 91 day to 12 months, that is 365 days, if any asset is still it is not recovered, it can be called as a substandard asset. Then third one is doubtful assets, which has remained in the substandard category for a period of more than 12 months. That is, after the 12 months period, as it is categorized as in substandard asset, if further 12 months, if assets are remained as a substandard asset, then it can be called as a doubtful asset where the amount is not going to be recovered at all by the bank. So here, for going through this one only, banks normally doubtful assets will be makeover by making 3 different steps. That is, number 1, which is called as up to 1 year, 20% provision is made by the banks from the profit to deal with respect to non-performing asset. If it is 2 years, 30% provision is made by the bank, and if it is 3 years, 100% provision is made by the bank, which has to be taken into account. Then last, loss assets, where loss has been identified by the bank or internal or external auditors or the Reserve Bank of India inspection, but amount has not been written off wholly. That is, the amount is not at all recovered, will be categorized as loss asset. Then now the question will arise, why these non-performing assets exist? What are the reasons behind these non-performing assets? The number 1 is lack of proper pre-enquiry by the bank for sanctioning of a loan to a customer. That means without inquiring about the customer's financial background, if banks are going to give a loan or extend the credit, then automatically in future those amount is going to be converted automatically to non-performing assets. Then non-performance of the business or the purpose for which the customer has taken the loan. The second is a customer has taken a loan for running a business, but that business is not running at all, that business is not existing, then automatically the assets will be categorized or converted to non-performing assets. Then some of the people will be there intentionally, they become defaulters, willful defaulter. In those cases also non-performing assets will exist. Then loan sanctioned for agriculture purpose. This is a peculiar situation in countries like India, where normally whenever government changes, these political parties, they say we comes to power, we go for a waiving of agricultural loans. In those type of scenarios also, in many cases, farmers doesn't clear their loans, anticipating that the government is going to go give a waiver. But normally it doesn't happen in 100%. So in that scenario also, the agriculture loans are converted to non-performing, are becoming not converted, or becoming non-performing assets. Then change in government policies leads to non-performing assets, as we have discussed just now. Then what will be the effects? What will be the effects of non-performing assets on banks and financial institutions? Because banks and financial institutions doesn't have their own money, they collect the deposits, and those deposits will be extended as loan, and the difference between deposit interest and loan interest is the basic revenue for the banks. So in that case, automatically if an asset which is actually a deposit amount which is given to somebody as a loan, if that loan is not going to be recovered, then automatically there will be a lot of negative effects will be on banks as well as the financial institutions. So what are those? So number one is restriction on flow of cash done by bank due to the provisions of fund made against NPAs. Automatically there will be no inflow, then automatically it affects the banking activities. Then drain of profit. So whatever the minimal profit normally makes by the banks or financial institutions, it is going to be drained. Then bad effect on goodwill. Then automatically when banks are not going to make profits, or not going to announce the profits, then investors or depositors thinks that bank is not doing well, then automatically in future nobody will going to deposit money in their banks. It directly affects the goodwill. Then bad effect on equity value, that is automatically it affects in the market, that is goodwill is one of the factor. Then market price of their shares will also fall down due to this aspect. Then factors impacting a rise in NPAs. Factors impacting rise in NPAs. So what are the factors which normally influence in rising of non-performing assets? There are two different factors are there, that is external factors as well as internal factors. When it comes to external factors, first one is ineffective legal framework and weak recovery tribunals. That is, whenever a person becomes defaulter, there are Indian law, there are so many loopholes are existing which are creating problems in solving the cases against the defaulters. So that is giving a chance to people to go for a defaulting, and no further action is taken in a stipulated time period, then that is one of the factor. Then lack of demand, economic recession or slowdown. There are so many ups and downs are taking place in the market. That is also one of the factor, because when market is down, when business is having the economic growth is in a downfall, then automatically businesses will not run in a smoother way. Then repayment of loan is also not going according to the stipulated norms. That is also one of the problem. Then change in government policies from time to time. Then willful defaults by the customer is already we have discussed in the previous case. Then alleged political interferences in many cases, not in especially in scheduled banks or anything, but there is much influence is there in cooperative banks, then district cooperatives, where political interference is more, and the default case is also more in those particular segments. Then factors impacting rise in NPAs when it comes to internal factors. That is, previously we have seen with respect to external factors. Now, if you see the internal factors, defective lending process, that is one reason. Inappropriate or non-use of technology, like management information system is not used. Computerization is also not used accurate. Then improper strength, weaknesses, opportunity, threat, that is normally we call it as SWOT analysis, not done properly. Then inadequate credit appraisal system is not there in the banking system as of now. Then managerial deficiencies, that is the people who are heads of the banking institutions, they are not able to operate in a proper way. Absence of irregular industrial visits and monitoring. Once the because of fall short of staff, managers are not visiting the industries to see whether the industry is running in a well versed manner where we have extended the credit. If that irregular visits takes place, normally measures will be taken in a different way. That is also not happening. Then deficiencies in reloaning process. Then corruption is one of the biggest internal problem. Then inadequate networking and linkaging between the banks. That is, one person is taking loan from another bank, defaulting there, and again taking loan from another bank. But this has nowadays it is minimized because of CIBIL score. After linking of Aadhaar with the bank accounts, then easily managers are able to see track the defaulter cases of other banks easily, which is not happened in the previous one. Then now let us move to the another important aspect. Why loan accounts go bad? That is, when NPAs are increasing, automatically accounts will become bad. That is bad debt. Then there are two aspects are there. The one is from the borrower side, another is from the banker side. Let us go one by one. Let us first of all go with the borrower side. First, borrower is not able to plan properly. Lack of planning in terms of how much he needs, how much really he needs money, what for he needs money. That is the first reason. Then, whenever a person takes money for a particular purpose, he is not using that money for that purpose. He is diverting that money to other areas. That is, diversification of funds is another problem. Then disputes within, that is within the organization, within the management level. Then no contribution, no